Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and so I got DOMs in my triceps this morning, actually in my chest too, but mainly my triceps. So let's talk a little bit about when DOMs can actually be a useful tool for certain reasons, because a lot of times I tell people it's overrated, it's not always an indication of a good workout, but it can be a sign of certain things if you know what you're looking for. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. A couple of people said yesterday my arms looked a little leaner today. That's mainly just because Brittany deferred me. It's getting really, really hot here in Texas, and I'm really furry, extremely hairy. Some of you guys have seen shirtless videos in the past. You guys see how furry I get. When it starts getting above 100 degrees Fahrenheit down here in Tejas, me being that furry is not fun. So Brittany took the clippers to me so that I don't sweat her out at night in bed. So she took all my fur off. She de-bared me. So that's all you're seeing there. Okay, the joking on that aside, that is true. But yeah, I actually am down 10 pounds. I'm down to svelte 240 pounds. I was up at 250. Obviously, I'm not going to get bodybuilder lean, but I'm probably just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Drop another 20 pounds and assess. It's like I don't have a gut right now or anything. Got a little bit of love handle, and we'll see how it goes. Honestly, just for my overall health, though, I could stand to drop down to 220. So yeah, I've been limiting myself to about 3,500 to 3,800 calories a day, trying to put in an hour on my bike every day. And now that it's getting warm outside for the sunlight, I might start rucking a backpack again, just for the extra low intensity cardio, just for the extra caloric burn and overall health. But back to the other point, DOMs. Well, for me these days, most of my training is overhead pressing of some type. Some people are always asking, what are you doing with your training lately? My training is not that complicated. I do a lot of accumulation work. I do a lot of triples with moderate weight. But I'm mostly overhead pressing because I know that for me, overhead pressing is my weak point, performance-wise, muscularly, everything else. So these days, I really only do 3 basic types of exercises. I do deadlifts, obviously beltless, conventional, sometimes deficit. So conventional deadlift variations, chin-up and pull-up variations, and then overhead pressing. And all my overhead pressing is off the floor, so everything's cleaned up. So I've been trying to work more with, obviously I do push press a lot. I probably do anywhere from 6 to 7 sets of push presses twice a week. So I do a lot of clean and push press. I'm also started incorporating cleaning and pressing dumbbells, because again, every variation, but I also started messing with behind the neck press last night. Because I know that my whole shoulder girdle needs to come up. That's a weak point for me, and I haven't done them in a while. And you guys have seen me do, I think last year, a year or so ago, I was doing seated behind the neck presses. That's not the same thing. Standing work is so much better athletically that if you want to be strong overall, doing standing work is so much better, particularly push pressing, cleaning it into position, really the way to go. And you know, again, this isn't necessarily the best advice for bodybuilders, but who cares? We're talking about getting big and strong. And for me, that's all that I care about. Being big, strong, healthy. Another reason, you know, to drop 20 pounds, just overall health. Probably not ideal to walk around above 220 at 5'9" when you're 40 years old. So yeah, I've been doing a lot more cardio these days, but I focus primarily, I would say 60% of my training is some type of overhead press. So I started doing the behind the necks again. And by about my 4th set, and I did 6 sets, my 4th set I started noticing that cramping in the lateral and medial head of my triceps. And it hurts even now just to do that. Before I went over to my dumbbell stuff, because that was my whole workout. Clean, push press it up, get it behind the neck, and do triples. And then get it back on the floor. So I clean it up and everything. But I noticed I am definitely working my triceps in a way that they are absolutely not used to. My triceps are like, what in the hell are you doing to me? Totally different pain, because normally I get cramping in my forearms from the push press, like right through here. But I'm definitely feeling it in my triceps. And so what's going on with that? What does that mean? Well, normally when you get DOMs, it's because you've either exceeded your maximum recoverable volume, you focus too much on eccentric reps, or you've done something, you stimulated a muscle in some way that you haven't stimulated it in recently. And sometimes that could be as simple as not doing an exercise often enough. Meaning if you have an exercise you only do once every 2 weeks, you're going to get some DOMs, but it's going to be mild DOMs. In this case, it's pretty intense DOMs. Like, I'm surprised. I'm really personally surprised that my triceps are that sore from 6 sets of behind the neck presses. And I was feeling it by the 4th set in the gym. And the difference there is that that indicates to me that that is a muscular weakness for me, that there's some performance element being worked, and most likely on the eccentric end, I'm probably getting a deeper eccentric stretch on those heads of the muscle than they're used to as a result of that. So that's probably why there's the intense DOMs, because people need to understand on a push press, the eccentric end of it is a totally different animal, and that includes a behind the neck push press. You are eccentrically loading certain muscles more than they're used to even on a strict press because of the heavier weight you're utilizing, because you're using a little bit of hip drive, leg drive to get the weight started. But for me, that's telling me that that eccentric loading causing that much soreness means that those parts of my tricep have not been stimulated adequately recently. And that's surprising to me because I have weeks to where I do 15 sets of push presses. And when you're doing 15 sets of push presses, realistically you would say, hey, my triceps are getting all the stimulation they need. They're getting hit on every angle in that exercise. Well, clearly that's not the case because I do a different variation of the exercise and my triceps are sore. My shoulders don't feel anything. They're fine. I don't feel any DOMs there. But my outer edge of my pec right through here, my triceps, and it's mainly those two lower heads. Again, surprising to me because I tend to think of overhead pressing like that, working the long head a little more due to the stretch on it. But no, they're sore. And so when you try a new variation of an exercise, it's not really that different of a variation, and you're a fairly experienced lifter, and you don't even use that heavy of a weight, and you come back and you're sore the next day, you found something. You found a performance element to a muscle that might be undertrained for you personally. That's a potential weak link in your strength. And if you're trying to be well-rounded and strong, and I don't mean strong of say I'm going to do the squat, bench, and the deadlift, and be strong on those. I mean well-rounded strong. Can you grab and pick up different objects or heavy things in any situation and a wide variety of different angles and pulls and do them without hurting yourself? That's strong. We're not talking about specificity of training here. We're talking about being well-balanced strength. And you know what? The thing that you find even among power lifters, a lot of people don't realize this. When you can take someone and have them do nothing but the squat, bench, and deadlift, people need to understand that. You can build a champion powerlifter who does 3 exercises. You can do 100% specificity of training, and people have done it successfully. But you know what? They're more injury prone. Why? Because they're training to do things only a certain way, and they can develop a little bit of muscle imbalances because of lack of variety in their training. They have certain angles and performance elements in different muscles that aren't going to be fully trained if you only do 3 exercises. So what you find is that people who do slight variations as accessory work for even their major lifts tend to get hurt less often, because if things slip out of the ideal bar path for them, or something goes wrong, or their technique breaks down in some way, they have different support muscles that can help stabilize joints and things at slightly different angles in their normal movement. Therefore, it seems to be protective to some extent. So, if you do a ton of push pressing, you're not going to have many muscle weaknesses. Let's be honest here. The clean and push press, if that was the only exercise you did for the rest of your life, most people could get pretty big and pretty strong doing that. In fact, I'd say if for some reason, some crazy reason, you decided to only do one exercise, the clean and push press is what I would recommend. It'll actually give you well-rounded strength. But the thing is, you're always using the same bar path. And maybe you're not building up your whole shuttle girdle for support, ideally. Maybe you're not building up the whole tricep for support ideally, and that is going to put you at a slightly higher risk for joint injury, for tears, things like that. So when you find a performance element like that, in this case, me doing the behind the neck push press, causes a large amount of soreness in a given area, that can be an indication that that's a weak link for you, something you need to work on. And it's not always the case, because it can also be a sign that you just trained excessively. You trained with too much volume and you're not going to recover well. But in this case, I did 6 triples. All right, 6 sets of 3, and I haven't done any overhead pressing in 3 days. I had actually taken 72 hours off from overhead pressing. There's no reason that was too much volume to recover from. So I'm going to put this down to, in the case of this, and this is stuff you guys could look at for your own training, of wow, that's just the performance element being worked differently. And it's probably a weak link for me. It's probably a part of my tricep that I need to bring up, and I'll bring it up by doing that exercise that made it sore. There's no need to specialize in it. Too many people get caught up in the, well, I found a weak link, let me just find a isolation movement for it. Well, those isolation movements are only going to handle my one weak link. They're not going to keep building up other stuff. I am wanting to do exercises exclusively these days that make me overall stronger. All around performance. I want stuff that's going to carry over to full body movements. Like the closest thing I do to isolating things these days are chin-ups, because it only works, about 30%, 40% of the muscles in your body. Everything else I do is standing work. Standing. Deadlifts, push presses, cleans. So yeah, DOMs like that can be an indication that you have found a weak performance element, especially if you didn't come in and do a lot of volume. If you came in and did a lot of volume on the new stuff, it's understandable you're going to get sore no matter what. You can do too much volume on an exercise you do twice a week, 3 times a week, and get sore. In this case, it was not a lot of volume. It was 18 reps, and it wasn't 18 reps with a heavy weight. It was probably 70% of my max. All right, it wasn't a super heavy weight. So again, muscular weakness, and this is one way that you can find muscle imbalances, because people will ask that, how do I know I've got a muscle imbalance? I don't know, try a major exercise performed by various strength athletes around the world, and if you get really sore from doing a modest amount of volume with it and a muscle, that's very possibly a muscle imbalance that you found. You found a weak link somewhere. That weak link is something you should work on. If you're weak at an exercise, any basic exercise, you found a muscle imbalance, you found a weak link, work on it, get better at it. Definitely a way to fix it, and DOMs can be used as an indicator of that if you learn to use it intelligently. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.